Sure. So,
Hello.
hi, how are you?
What's up? How you doing?
How, how's it going?
It's going great. Uh, did a lot of these, like I'm doing these sessions, 30-minute sessions with my audience, stacked them back
Awesome.
to back, and it was pretty intense. I'm going to just give me a minute. I'm just gonna set up a new session file real quick because
No
if we're gonna
problem.
do a
No problem.
podcast meetup, then we got to do a
Well,
podcast out of it.
are you able to hear me? Can you hear me good? Do I
Yeah, I
sound
can hear
good?
you. Yeah, I can hear you
Do
great.
I sound low?
Nope, you
Make sure.
sound great.
Awesome.
New
Awesome. No
multi-track.
problem.
All
No
right.
problem. I was explaining earlier to one of the guests who was asking about how to start a podcast. I was mentioning something called Chirp, which is like a Twitter for podcasting, but it's like micro podcasting. It's a
Oh,
very
that's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. If you can commit to doing that for 3 minutes, maybe that's something that you want to, because podcast is commitment. It's not
Facts.
easy.
Facts. Hey, one thing that might be helpful, if I might suggest, I can't do it on my end because I'm not the host of this live, but can you type in a comment that's like the one-liner of what we'll be talking about, breaking
Oh,
down
pin.
podcast deals, yeah, and then pin it up.
Hold on a second.
052820.
I'm trying to do that. See, like I was saying, I'm still working out the kinks with the ways that I used to do things, and now with COVID, I'm doing it live. So I'm actually gonna do
Check,
the
check, check.
pin.
All right. I'm all set up, man. I'm ready to rock.
Set up. All right. Let
Yeah.
me see if I could do this. Give me one quick second.
Meanwhile, what's up to the people joining? What's up, Josue Aquarius?
I appreciate everybody who's on.
What up, Devin Harris? What up, Shane? What up, A Candy? Boy, D-Shot Images, handsome entrepreneurship for kids. Oh, hands-on. I was like, handsome for kids. That's funny. Tokyo Pedals, Leighton Zeal. That's a cool name. Chase. What up, Chase? How you doing, man? York Seaton. Adam Hamway. He says John Henry's the GOAT. Nah, man, you the GOAT.
Yeah,
Come
we
on,
appreciate
man.
it. On. I'm gonna get that pin settled if you give me 1 second because I'm doing it from my iPad. I usually do it from my phone, so
Okay,
that's
okay.
why.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No
I
worries.
have
I
that.
think I can actually put the comment up and you can
Yeah.
pin
Okay. Thank
talk
you. That'll be helpful. So what's
podcast
going on?
uh
Everybody's you're on.
talking podcast deals with podcasters of NJ.
Oh, what up from London? All right. So y'all have a.
Talking Grown podcasts and pod deals with okay. All right, it's up there. It's check to see. I think you should be able to tap it
Yeah,
and then
see it.
pick it up.
Perfect. Yeah, I see it. I got it.
All right, cool. Little typo in there, but
Pin.
that's good enough. All right.
Perfect.
Cool. I'm just gonna record on my
Welcome.
end. We are recording
Yeah.
levels. So we're live. Hey, what's up? How are you?
So, welcome to our virtual meetup. This is what we've been doing since we are not able to connect in person. So we said, you know what? Let's keep on. Let's do the IG live. Let's engage. Let's get this content going.
I
So
love
we
it.
appreciate you.
I love
So
it. I love it. I'm pumped to be here. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you being here. So there's so much to delve in. So if anyone, I mean, a lot of people know who you are. I want you to introduce yourself and let everybody know what you're about. I mean, you're a vlogger, you're a real estate developer, you're an entrepreneur, and you sold your first business at 21 years old. That story is amazing. So introduce
Oh,
yourself.
thank you. Yeah, I am just, I'm an entrepreneur. That's my DNA. For me, like an entrepreneur is just someone who's like, scrappy and resourceful and can make a lot out of a little. That, to me is like the essence of entrepreneurship. And like, it has taken many forms for me over the years, but along the way I developed just a love for creating content. So I work that into my game, and it has been part of my game the last 5 years, and it's just been a blessing, man. I you know I told Steve that I actually never get to talk about, like, let's say podcasting. I've never done an interview specifically on podding
Oh,
or stuff, but I can say that at some point when I first started making content, I realized that I actually really enjoy content, but even beyond the like pay someone and then sit around and then get a video. Like I
Right.
noticed that I really liked gear. And right away when I was doing video, I really noticed that audio makes a huge improvement on the video quality, right? So, and then I actually realized this is interesting, but people people like place a lot more emphasis sometimes on like the video quality and the lens, but I realize you can get away with decent video if you have great audio.
Yes.
um, and so then that started my foray into audio and stuff like that. So yeah, man, it's great to be on. Thank you guys.
We appreciate
um, I'm just a content loving founder, so you can put it that way.
I love that. So I want to ask you, how did you get into podcasting?
Hmm.
What made you do it? I mean, you answered a little bit, but what was like, let me do podcasting. This is it.
Yeah. Good question. Podcasting, I started hearing about however long ago, 4 years ago, but it seemed like something that like what people listen to that I hadn't like. It just, I don't mean to characterize it that way, but it was just something that it just so happened that the majority of people that were referring me to podcasting was like a certain, like, it was usually like a liberal male working in the tech space. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I kind of get it. Like, but the I didn't really get proper into podcasting until I got invited to host a podcast.
Okay.
And that was via Gimlet Media. And Gimlet Media is an incredible player in the space who I have the utmost respect for, founded by Alex Bloomberg and a guy named Matt Lieber, whom Alex Bloomberg was a producer on This American Life.
Yes.
And he also did some work on Planet Money and just like a 20-year long um, avid radio producer for NPR. And, he just saw this opportunity to create a business, almost like a podcast network. He
Yes.
noticed like, hey, a lot of podcasts, like they're cool, but they're a little scrappy. I think they had a room to enter with like a really high touch type of podcast. So they had already had their kind of flagship shows like Startup and Science Versus and a few of those. But the really cool thing is the first time, what up, Neil? What up, Kat? The first time that I ever that they invited me to work with them was their first ever branded podcast. So
Oh,
this was
wow.
when they were like, you know what, we're gonna make a podcast for a brand, and that brand is going to pay me. Meaning Gimlet Media. So that was very interesting to me because you had a brand paying a mid six-figure sum to have a podcast produced for them.
Right.
And as part of it, they wanted a host that didn't work at Gimlet Media. They wanted someone that had some business experience and could be a reasonable voice. And so, just through happenstance, I just ended up being presented with the opportunity. And so that was my first foray into podcasting proper. And since then, I really have loved it as a medium, as a tool, and have like really learned to appreciate the world of podcasting.
How lucky were you though? Like that's an opportunity, like a branded podcast invitation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
super.
No, but I'm glad you mentioned the luck piece because, I used to, much earlier, I used to be like, yo, keep that luck shit in your pocket, let's say. But luck plays a part. I do believe in fortune. I also, though, believe in, there was a reason they thought of me. It wasn't
Yeah.
because I was in obscurity. It was because I might not have been podcasting, but I was sharing my voice in whatever ways that I knew at the time. And it was just enough for someone to be able to imagine you in that role. And so, like, that I
Yeah.
think is key, in podcasting and other opportunities as well.
I feel like manifestation, the law of potentiality, the potential
Mm-hmm.
of that brings that a breath. That's why I think that that was your opportunity. And I think that's a great story. I wanted to ask you too. So about your on-air personality. How did you find, because a lot of people have a way of being obviously in the medium, especially in the space of podcasting, they have a particular personality and then off air, they're completely different. Do you have a personality, an on-air personality, a podcast personality?
That's a great question. And it's actually a deep question, in my opinion, deeper than meets the eye, because um, the very first time, yo, what up, Aunt Fraser?
And
Anthony. Yo, the very first time that I ever encountered this idea of like, you know, a persona, so to speak, was through Marcus Samuelsson, whom is a, you know, restaurateur and chef personality and stuff like that. And years ago, when I was running Co-Found Harlem, not for profit incubator, I used to do these little interviews, you know, sessions. We call them war stories. I should bring that back. And funnily enough, I had Ant on that. He was one of my first ones that we ever did, man. Nuts. And anyway, I tried to invite Marcus Samuelsson to jump on. And so he invited to, you know, he said, hey, come to the Red Rooster for coffee. Red Rooster's not even open for coffee. So it was like private restaurant. He's asking me questions. He assesses me. And then he just starts imparting wisdom. And one of the things that he shared was specifically around being in this domain of like, you don't necessarily have to have a public facing side of your business or you as a personality if you want. Like, there are a lot of successful people that just keep to themselves. There are also a lot of successful people that decide that they're going to work that into their game. And he had recognized that I was on the track of doing that. And as someone who did that, but the twist is that Marcus is very introverted. And so he told me that, like, you know, even though he's on the chef shows and stuff like that, like, you energize and bring to life a version of yourself that's still you, authentically you. But you got to turn it on for, you know, the medium, because one very interesting thing that now weaving into Gimlet Media, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, ever, on podcasting and creating content ever, came from Gimlet Media. And Alex's wife, Nazanin Rafsanjani, was creative director at that time. And we would do a lot of tracking, which is like, Gimlet Media, the way they do their podcast is they write scripts and they're very like produced in that sense. And then you finally sit down and you read the script. But here's the thing. Alex Bloomberg, who's a radio genius and a long time at it, when you listen to him speaking, it sounds like he's just talking, but I know that he's reading something. And when you're new at it, at tracking, like, you're going to sound like you're writing. But anyway, she told me, she said, hey, whatever energy level you bring to the medium, you're going to come across one level subdued. So when I was tracking, I would just read the script like this, like I would read normally. Shout out to Jersey, lived in Trenton when I first immigrated to the US. Interesting discussion, talking, growing, podcast. That's how you read to yourself. So your first inclination is to want to, you know, speak in that tone. But she said, hey, if you feel like you're extra, you're actually coming across energetic and lively. And if you're coming across normal, you're coming across subdued. And so anyway, that to me is pretty philosophical, because when you pair that with Marcus's comment, when you podcast, you have to bring to life a version of yourself. And that, you know, being, does it become a caricature of you, or is it you? Where does it stop and where does it end? You know, and who knows? And then you get in your head about like, yo, am I being JH or am I being me? And like, it's a very interesting duality. But what I'm really enjoying is in a lot of ways, content is like hip hop for me, in that the same way a hip hop artist, they vent through their, you know, lines. Like, I have the same inclination when it comes to my podcasting. I have to take to the mic or video or whatever and just speak into it my truth. And it's a way that I process my own thoughts real time, and then pair it with vulnerability, which, you know, sometimes it's scary to admit your mistakes, but anyway, you do it. And so that's kind of my take on that. A lot of depth there, man, that could be unpacked, but I think that's good for now. I hope people enjoyed that one. So Sharon Folk says performing. I guess performing is a little bit, but it sounds to me like it's fake a little bit, but it's more like a version of you that's going to become your, you know, how people consume you, if you will.
right? What the energy you put out. And I think that's a good comparison with hip hop, even poetry. You are performing, and it's the vulnerability and the art of your true self, that the energy you give out and what you're giving is going to transcend your
Mm.
message. So I think that's what, and that was follow up to my next question. It was, is your personality the same in every medium, or does it change as you level up in life?
Mm. That also begs the question. I think Ant and I were talking about this on his pod. Like, you know, my values and your values, all of our values will evolve as we go
Mm-hmm.
on. So
Right.
what happens with this issue is very distinct to this world of building audience and so forth. But what happens when you build um, a point of view and a persona uh, upon certain values and views, and then as you evolve those views and you change them, like there's that awkward space in between sometimes where you're like you're growing out of your older values or developing them or refining them, but you haven't necessarily like concretely like defined the next one. So you have this like in between, and it's like she's giving you those Charlie Rose questions.
I know. Shout out to Ant. You know, he gave me my chance to do my meetup at MVP. Thanks to him.
Oh, word.
You know,
That's the
at
homie, man.
MVP. Shout out to Ant. He's the homie, and he's so dope. But honestly, it's true. I have a good example of someone who used to do that. I don't know if you remember Nicole Bitchy. She was a gossip columnist, and she put her energy, and that's what her take was. And then she completely changed her brand, and
Mm,
she out of that value of not wanting to
mm,
do gossip or entertainment. And then
mm.
she had to revamp herself, and she did an amazing way. But sometimes I feel like in those mediums, if you contain those same values and you change, people don't forgive you sometimes because they remember, depending on what type of energy and what type, I mean, nothing's wrong with gossip if that's what you're into, and that's what she did for entertainment, but it's not forgiving, I feel, sometimes for
Yeah,
audiences.
and I
So
think yeah, that's an astute point. And like I would say the exploration of your true self vastly outweighs what any, respectfully, what any person in your audience thinks of you. So like, and I say that, not as someone who hasn't struggled with that in the past, right? It's like,
right.
all
No.
right, it's okay. Like at some point, you just express how you're feeling. And then what's interesting is I find that when you position your growth, when you come at it from like this viewpoint of like, hey, I'm early in my process. I'm sharing transparently real time as my views are changing. And, my only goal with this, is to just share real time what I'm experiencing. It's not me coming from I'm right. It's not me coming from you're wrong. It's just like is what it is. So yeah, that has been really helpful, man. And hopefully that can help some folks kind of navigate this really intricate dance that is developing your on-air personality.
Yeah, that is the intricate dance, especially when you mirror what happened in traditional radio. You look at people, let's say like Charlemagne the God, you look at people like Ebro, and you see their involvement, right, as they
Mm-hmm.
leveled up their career and the things that they put out in mediums, the content, the books, the Apple deals, and you wonder like, okay, does that work for that person? But I think paying attention to your own authenticity and your true self and being the most honest that you can be, I feel like that works a lot. I mean, people do whatever they feel they want to do. But as you evolve, even what we're doing with Podcasts in New Jersey, when we started over a year ago, we have changed a lot of the thoughts and values daily. I mean, you're constantly transforming as a human. So I think it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of, difficult to stay the same,
No, I
But
completely agree. Hey, can I do something fun real quick that we could
yeah,
probably only do on this meetup?
go ahead.
Let me do. I see some people asking about the Joe Rogan deal and stuff like that, and I
Yes.
definitely want to get to that. But
We
let's
spoke
do
about
like
that.
let's do a little gear breakdown real quick. You can just kind of go through, gear. I figure we can only do that on podcasters in New Jersey.
Yes.
So I want to show people my podcast setup. This is wait a second. So, I go into any computer. At first, I did, just like a MacBook. Then later, I really liked the idea. The thing that I didn't like about setting it up on the MacBook is that you have to like mess around with cables all the time on that and like reset up and I realized I wanted something where I can flip the switch on and off and my setup would be like automatic, so to speak. So I use, you know, the Mac, whatever. As far as the audio receiver, I use this Focusrite. This is an excellent, excellent audio receiver. You don't have to get this 4-rung receiver. I bought it because I knew I wanted at some time to be able to do like group sessions, if you will. But you can get the two input Focusrite. Excellent piece of gear. I think it costs like move the microphone to the left and zoom in more. I will. I'll get back to it. So the 2-prong Focusrite costs like $150. Excellent audio receiver. And then for those who may not know, the purpose of this is that the microphone actually kind of plugs directly into here. This processes the audio and enhances the quality of the audio. And then this transmits it to the computer via a USB cable. Okay. So now I use the Shure. I use the, what is SB7, SMB7. This is the universal radio mic. I also, however, have this MK4 mic. Here, let me take this thing off. This is a Sennheiser microphone. It's a great mic. It's it's got a lot of gain, so that's good, but I find it kind of fuzzies up the audio. This mic, the reason I really like this mic and the reason it's the standard radio mic is because it's very low. If you look at my wave file on here, you can see it's very small. But the reason it does that is because it's not very roomy, meaning it doesn't pick up a whole lot of room tone. And you know, in loud environments, like it'll just pick you up and then you can raise your volume in post. And then lastly, I have this mic, which is a Warm Audio 87 mic. This mic is only made in Austin, Texas, which is a studio city. They have a lot of excellent audio engineers in Austin. And I bought this from a producer at Gimlet Media, whom I recorded one day on it, and I really loved it. And then, you know, I have like, you know, XLRs. I use these Sony headphones. They're great. I bought a number of them. And yeah, that's my setup. I also have this handy dandy like fake microphone that is just like a little decorative item that I really like. It's kind of like my good luck charm. And yeah, I have a second Shure mic as well. I just like, you know, I just really like gear. You know, and like I wanted to know, one second.
No problem.
I wanted to know why mics are good, why they're not. And then I realized like the only way to know, just like in anything, is to have a bunch of mics. So I just started collecting mics over time, and then I developed my my preference for mics. So I'm just gonna get some of these questions, and then I definitely still want to talk about Joe Rogan and all that stuff. Someone says, "What software do you use?" I use Adobe Audition. I created a session file that saves this template, and I can actually share this. Ooh, why don't we do an exclusive right now? Podcasters of New Jersey exclusive.
That's right, exclusive, y'all.
Okay, so after that first podcast that I did with Gimlet, I did a number of other ones, and then finally they invited me, and we did another project called Up at Night with WeWork. And here's the cool thing: I did it remotely because I was confident enough in my chops to operate on my own, and I didn't really want to have to commit to going in all the time. And they said, fine. However, we need our audio engineer. To do like a technical session with you, okay? And just like make sure that your audio is up to snuff. So he did it, he mixed it, he mastered it. We created the ideal podcast template that is, you know, Gimlet Media approved, and he saved it for me as a session file. So what I can do is I don't know if you guys have an email list or whatever, but I can send that session file, and anyone who uses Adobe Audition, you know, you import that session file into your program, and when you open it, it's just automatically going to have the ideal podcast settings uploaded.
You heard that. Gimlet approved. So yeah, what I'll do is I'll send you email, and I could just maybe upload it to the website because I have a website, podcastersnewjersey.org. So
Perfect.
yes, that'd be
Perfect.
perfect.
And then the last bit of gear is,
As soon as we
you got to have the soundproofing, man. You know what I'm saying? You got to have a little bit of vibes. Cool. So, wow, that was super fun. I never get to do that.
I appreciate you doing that. I actually have a Blue Mic Yeti. I'm using the Microsoft microphone, which works really well. I have the Blue Mic Yeti, which I wanted to use, but I was like, I'm gonna just keep it simple, and the audio sounds good in this. I have my Lenovo, and I have my monitor as
Love
well.
it. Love it.
Also, I've been using a lot more. Have you tried Soundtrap? Have you looked into Soundtrap? Soundtrap is the new it's a technology for music and intro. You can put an interface in, you can use an MDI to do anything in it, even play music with people from around the world. But it also has a podcasting tool for transcribing audio and doing the transcribing edits with the words.
Wow, that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's Soundtrap. So they just recently came out with that. I think we're gonna get disconnected in the next minute or so for the hour thing. Would you come back in? Yeah.
We're gonna get disconnected?
Probably so, because I've been on, I think it's the whole hour cut off at IG.
Oh, I didn't know you've been on for that long. Yeah, okay. I'll just rejoin you, or
yeah,
does that work?
I'm gonna rejoin, and then you just put your pin up, and then we'll continue our conversation because I have a few other questions.
And then so the next chapter we'll do, someone's asking like, is now a good time to get into the podcast world? So when we come back, we'll do like a lay of the land on podcasting. Cool?
Yeah, we'll talk about that and the deals and everything you've done with podcasting. All right, perfect. Thank you guys. We'll be right back, okay? So we're back. My apologies. I tried to do everything. I'm not sure if it's an issue with IG or what I was doing, but I'm glad that you guys are back. John, please come back. I'm here. I'm just going to do this and enunciate and speak loud. Sorry about the delay. We still got some time to finish our conversation. It was going so well, and I apologize for the delay. Now you guys can hear me. Now we're back. We're committed. My apologies. I'm not sure what was going on with IG. I feel like I'm in a battle for verses right now. So I'm not sure. I swear I even bought my giant blue mic out. I'm hoping that John comes back on and we continue this conversation. I mean, it's a little hectic out in this IG world, so I'm glad that you guys can hear me. So yeah, we're gonna continue asking him a few more questions and just continue our interview. Things are going great. I'm glad that you guys can hear me. I had to completely disconnect all my microphones, everything else, but that's technology for you. And I'm here. Hopefully John is not tired of trying to come back in and give us one more shot. And yes. So yeah, so we were having conversation. There he is. All right. There. All right. No. What happened? But I'm here.
Hey.
I don't know.
Someone said the spirit of Ted Riley entered the conversation.
I just said I feel like I'm in a battle of verses. It was like, I can't hear you. You can hear me. I brought up my mic. I have my wind filter, my pop filter thing on, and I'm like running. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it just like this. Keep it simple.
Yeah. That's the same thing I'm on. Phone.
So back to what we're talking about. I mean, it's a great conversation. Again, we appreciate you, all your nuggets, and I'm going to send you the email so you can send me that so I can share with the group. I appreciate that. I wanted to ask you, so tell the community a little bit about what you did with eBay so they understand that side of what you did with podcasting and eBay.
Would you post, would you pin my comment?
Yeah.
What up? Project Toro, Jay DeWar, Young Hustler, Ferris Danielle, Terry Johnson, General Designer with the Z-I-G-N-H-E-R. Wow. D Fritz, Limitless, Brain Art, D Fritz. People get so creative with their shit. I just came up with my name, John Henry, and then it was taken, so I just added style, which for the longest, people thought I was like trying to be a fashion influencer. Nah. All right. So let's dig in. I will. So this is what happened, okay? There are, oh, did you pin my thing?
No. Can you send it to me again and I'll pin it?
Yeah.
Apologize. So I'm just glad that we're back and we're not on the roof somewhere in St. Louis trying to get our sound right. I felt like Nelly and Teddy. I'm like, what is going on? Oh,
NJ.
I appreciate it. So
Uh,
yeah, so talk about eBay.
it's live. Can you grab it?
Yeah, let's see it.
Yeah, dog.
In it.
Whitney Chun, Relling Global. What up? What up? Oh, yeah. Was I tired or was I dreaming when I saw that? Didn't Instagram launch like a video chat?
I
It
saw
did.
that a video conference room, and I know
Yeah.
that Facebook did that. Yeah, that's very recent. That's in the last few days that I saw that.
That's what I thought. Okay, so
So
dude,
tell
this
us
guy's
about.
dying to talk about the Joe Rogan deal. I mean, it's not a
Oh
huge
yeah,
deal,
Joe
man.
Rogan.
I mean, look, all right, look, let's break it down. It's nothing out of this world. Like, it's the same shit that happens on any other medium, except it's the first time that it happened in podcasting. So,
Yes.
like, yeah, you could say, oh, it's a huge deal. Or you could just say, hey, we saw this coming. It kind of makes sense. You know, he built a massive platform, and it was only a matter of time until someone brought him exclusively to Spotify and they paid the premium, not unlike any network pays for a show. You know, when you build a very popular show, if it's a legacy show like Seinfeld, then you know people pay to license the content and run it as reruns. But while the show is live, it's usually anchored in a home network. You know,
Right.
it's usually anchored in a home network, and it just depends like where you landed. You know, a lot of it is like the timing of the network. Like, are they ready for that kind of content? Are they looking for that kind of content? Um, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that's just all it is, man. I think it's just further validation. Go out there, build a podcast. But look, the reason I build a podcast is not to have a big exit, because I do not think that that's going to be that only applies to people that either A, built a massive podcast, or B, are pretty well known. I think what you are going to start to see is in the same exact way that Netflix is paying for comedy specials. Um, I think you're going to start to see um, podcast or audio companies pay people before they have a podcast to do
Right.
an exclusive podcast on their podcast network.
Yes.
Um,
And
and
that's what
so,
was the question someone had. What do you think Joe Rogan's deal is going to do? And that's a good segue to that. It's going to change the game.
yeah, yeah, I think it was just a straw that broke the camel's back. But I think people were headed there. I mean, Amazon announced today that they're going to be building out their podcast infrastructure, which, by the way, they already have the ultimate voice ecosystem infrastructure, which is Alexa's, right? So they have a network, like an enormous network of, you know, voice activated devices where people can say, Alexa, play me a podcast. And then, you know, that's why they're going to have their own content. But look, that stuff is good and it's just fascinating to talk about. But I think it's less relevant for where our listeners are commonly than not on the ground floor. And, you know, I don't think you
Right.
should build a podcast to sell it. I don't think you should. You know, I believe in building a podcast as another medium that people can consume your content.
Right.
And there are a number of different podcasts that you can grow. You can grow an interview style show.
Right.
You can have a fictional podcast. You can have a very docu-series style podcast. In my case, my podcast isn't okay, here's the one thing I'm going to talk about. The way I'm
Right.
doing JH Radio is it's a podcast. It's almost like the umbrella brand that houses all of my audio experience, if you will.
I
So,
love that.
it gives me a ton of flexibility to weave in and out of different topics and not feel like I'm bound to anything. And if one day I just want to rant on the mic, I can
Right.
do that. If another day I want to riff with someone, I can, you know, on an interview style, I can do that. You know, if I, you know, I've done e-commerce deep dives, real estate deep dives. Like, I really like this approach of like having this umbrella brand that is your podcast, and you can insert keynote segments and all kinds of things into there. So,
Right.
yeah, that's just a little bit about types of podcasts. And then I guess to just button up by answering your first question, which was tell people about the deal that you did, I got paid to host a podcast for a production company. You know, it
Right.
happens to be Gimlet. It could be any production company. It could be ABF Creative, which is Anthony's. It could be
Right.
if podcasters of New Jersey start a podcast production company. What you guys would be in charge of doing is selling the concept of having a podcast.
Right.
Someone buys it. Usually, it's a bigger company. Let's say Prudential buys one, and Prudential says, "Okay, great. We want a podcast around this. Call it,
Right.
the small business response to COVID in New Jersey. Great. Then you guys launch a limited edition podcast. The production company's job would be to research whom they're going to interview, what stories they're going to tell, all this other stuff. And you would go and find a host. Now,
Right.
sometimes the host of that podcast works in the production company. Like Gimlet has got to that point where they have these hosts on staff. In other cases, you have the heads of the production companies are also hosts. And then lastly, you can invite an external party to host it, and you can get paid for that. And it is a wonderful place to be because you're getting paid to then be distributed, on a podcast that is backed by a corporate entity. And it's a phenomenal way to build your credibility and chops. And then everyone wants to work with you, and then you can do it all over again and make a lot of money by podcasting. It's amazing.
Right. And we recently just launched Podcasters Unlimited, which is this live interview that we're going to be putting out monthly as our podcast, and our content of what we talk about in the beginning, we put it on our website. So that's a great tool that you're saying. Use all of your content and have it in an umbrella of your brand. Even any of your side conversations, I saw any of anything that's content and audio, you have it housed under there. So any content is good content, is useful. And that's something that we talk about repurposing your content and having that availability to use all of it.
Exactly.
And that's a gem.
I'm doing these 30-minute sessions with people where I'm making myself available to folks for 30-minute like little deep dives. And I just decided, not just, but as part of it, let me see here. Oh, shit. Are you sure? No, I'm not going to switch over, but I did record the audio for as often as I can. I'll try to take phone calls on the mic. I'll take team sessions on the mic. Like, I've just gotten to this place in my content creation where I realize the more you document, the more you'll have available for later. For instance, it would have been impossible to make The Last Dance if they didn't document the journey along the way. Think about it. None of the footage in The Last Dance, if you saw it, almost none of the footage was contemporary. All of it, 99% of it. The only bits that weren't repository and archived footage or photos was the interviews that they did.
Right.
So just by ESPN taking care to document the experience of, one of their highest profile legends, created the ability for them to dig in there, splice the story together, ship it, and create one of the most successful, if not the most successful, sports documentary of all time.
It really was.
So documenting allows you to do that, and it just gets more valuable with time.
It does, and we have the opportunity to do it. We have a computer in our hand 24/7, which is our phone. There's so many wonders that you can do that. I mean, this documentation right now is everything, especially that we have the availability. I wanted to ask you, how has your experience doing venture capital influenced your approaches to partnerships and what you've done with your podcast?
It hasn't. Venture is a very specific animal. I think the only thing what it will do is enhance your understanding of timing industries, knowing when an industry is growing, knowing when an industry is up next, and being able to spot winners within that industry. And you can make that relevant to podcasting, but that's really just like a universal set of awarenesses, if that's a word, that you develop in venture. So, but I can't say it changed my approach. In fact, it's interesting because it's vice versa. Right. My doing content changed my approach to venture, not vice versa. My doing podcasting, when I came into venture, I realized people really weren't like truly embracing content in venture. And so
Wow.
I actually think honing a skill set in content allows you to make yourself multi-dimensional in any industry you enter. Any.
Right.
So like right now, I'm spending a lot more time and energy thinking about real estate. And naturally, I'm thinking about, hey, what are some of the um, ancillary ways that I can build my real estate business? In other words,
Right.
um, it's not just I buy buildings and sell them or and repair them or rent them. I do, but now I'm going to be including a content piece on top, a podcast piece on top, and just any industry you touch can be. You can extract more value if you develop a core competency around content production.
I love that. The core competency around content. It's absolutely correct. I mean, when you look at businesses, even let's say in the realm of like lawyers, we have one of the group members, he's a lawyer, he has a podcast that enhances your ability to connect to people. That enhances people to know you at an ultimate intimate level and professional level. So people are like what banks did. When you think about banks and the relationships they created, right? The
Mm-hmm.
conglomeracy, they have your mortgages, they have your credit cards, they have the first loan that you've gotten for your house. They build these relationships. How? They get you emotionally, they tie you emotionally, and
Mm.
their relationship. So I feel like that business aspect into podcasting, what people are doing with branding, is excellent. So I applaud you for that nugget right there. I mean,
Excellent, man. I agree. It's
I want
excellent.
to,
And
I don't know how much time you have because I feel so bad about the intro earlier. I'm just so happy that we're able to talk and you
oh,
can hear clearly.
girl,
So
come on now.
I
Like
wanted to
anyone
ask,
who's in content just knows that that's just part of the game. You know how many times I've been on like let's say a TV set or something just goes wrong and like the whole day shot. So I'm glad it was only just a few minutes. So yeah, I have some time. Why don't we do I guess let's do like one last question from you and then let's transition into like a few from the audience.
definitely, that's what I was thinking about doing. I wanted to ask you one question. What if you want to pitch a podcast, let's say to a brand or to a network, what would be the three key elements to pitching a podcast to a brand, or pitching as a production company or just as a podcaster
I
to
love
sell
it.
your
That's a great question. Huh. Let's see. I've done, in truth, little of this because I find that the it works in an inverse manner than the question suggests. So, in my
okay,
experience, you magnetize yourself via good content production and you attract leads, in other words inbound rather than outbound. Now look,
right,
you can supplement them with each other, and I can get into like if do pursue like Ant who's in here, he he sends out proposals and stuff like that. And so the basics of that would be a nice clean deck with an stating like who you are, what you're looking to do, why you chose this particular brand, and like who is the specific audience that you are especially well equipped to produce for and to reach. Because look, at the end of the day, let's be honest, this money within corporations is coming from the marketing department. And the reason I specify where it's coming from is because all different types of money behaves differently. So when money is coming from the marketing department, if you trace that money back even further, there's professionals who then are managed by other people and what have you. And ultimately it goes all the way up to the CMO, whom the marketing department's job is to create leads, and then sales job is to close them. And so in any well-oiled machine, as they're de facto going to have to be well-oiled in order to afford being able to pay you, marketing is interested in opening leads, which if you trace that objective down further into the organization chart, it's talking about
I'm sorry, oh my god, this is
distracting.
like
It's talking about uh, impressions, right? So you are going to have to, and not only impressions, because the quantity of impressions is important in some respects, but now I'm finding that the industry is leaning towards a higher quality engagement and more depth of impression versus just like, you know, broad reach. So in other words, when you're making this deck, you should summarize, hey, I'm specifically well equipped to reach Black LGBTQ, you know, specifically like, you know, folks coming from the transvestite community facing this issue. That's super niche. I know, it's just what came to mind. But like, it could be that. It could be like, you know, you could be honing in on either a certain demographic or honing in on a certain need or narrative or whatever. Like, that's going to be your job as a production company to pitch. Now, let me get to my original point real quick. That's if you want to do outbound, which I do recommend if you really want to build a podcast production company. But I'm going to guess people here on a slightly different boat. I'm going to guess that people here are interested in starting their own podcast and potentially finding themselves in a situation where I find myself, which was being paid to podcast. And that kind of opportunity, in my opinion, comes more inbound than outbound. Transgender, not transvest. Sorry. Yeah, transgender. Thanks for correcting me. So what do I mean by that? If you are doing your thing, producing content, whether it's video, podcast, written, whatever, you will be top of mind for certain production companies when people say, hey, I'm looking for, when a brand like Prudential says, hey, ABF Creative, I'm looking for someone to host this, this podcast, let's say. You're going to want to make sure that they think of you, and they'll only think of you if you're constantly top of mind by producing and sharing content. Like my homegirl Deanna who's in here, she is a realtor in Jersey City. And so she executed on a show called, you know, Meet Me in JC, where she's taking people around Jersey City and, you know, showing the lifestyle and what have you. And she's building brand and being top of mind for people who might want to buy in Jersey City. So similarly, same principle, except you're going to want to be top of mind for people who run production companies. They're going to want to think of you when they think of a podcast host. And that's how you get paid to podcast. Yeah. By the way, let me just say this to get people's, Aunt Fraser with the distillation. He says, okay. That is correct. I love it. I'm going to tweet that. Shout out. Let me encourage people and get people amped up that strangely branded podcast deals can be pretty big. Like you can get paid a decent amount to host a branded podcast. They could be low 5-figure deals for someone maybe starting out. They could be mid 5-figure deals. They could be Joe Rogan deals. You know, thankfully Joe Rogan pushed the fucking price up. It's like, you know, that asshole that pays too much for a house in a neighborhood, and it's all the prices go up. But if you have stock and someone pushes the price up, it's a great thing. If you don't have stock and someone pushes the price up, it's not great. So the question is, do you have stock? In other words, get you a podcast, build it up, and now that Joe Rogan sold for 100 million, you can say, yo, I thought I was worth 50K, but actually I only need that 75. You know what I'm saying?
Just start the podcast. You made a lot of valuable points. I love the impressions versus the broad view of just being seen and being followed and having that audience base. Those are two different things. I see that a lot in social media with a lot of influencers who have a lot of views but might have a lot of impressions to the type of brands that they're marketing to. So that's something that's starting to change. So that's a good point. Also too, what you're stating with being seen. Shout out to your homegirl who's doing that. That's amazing. She's bringing that notoriety into the town, and people say, okay, you know what? It's Jersey City, it's not nationwide and things like that, because the same thing I'm doing podcasting in Jersey, it doesn't matter. It's a story and it's a brand and it's a relationship that you're building with people, you know? So I appreciate that. That's great. That's great. Thank you. That was a good 2-part question, because you're manifesting bringing that towards you, and then you're outbound looking for it either way. So any questions that you guys have, we're gonna start answering them, and then I see someone here with the Dominican flag. Shout out.
There's so many Dominicans in the world. Yeah. There's more than I thought. I have Dominicans that follow me from fucking everywhere. I want to start a podcast about criminal Trump. Cool. Not in Jersey, but in Miami. What up? All right. Well, let's just, guys, if you have any questions on podcasting, This is one of the few times that I ever get to talk super in depth about podcasting. So let me know. I'll give you guys a few minutes to get in here with questions. Where do we plug the podcast when we're ready?
Okay.
What does that mean? I don't know. Can you clarify the question?
Where they're hosting, I'm assuming where they host it, I guess, to get it distributed. Is that the question? Once you're done with the podcast, where do you put it so it can be heard? Is that the question?
I'm not sure. What I've done though, to break down different types of deals, I had a show called Chop It Up that I just did in my home with my buddy Brandon, and then VaynerMedia, Gary's company, really wanted to pick it up because, you know, they're not so diverse over there, and I think they wanted a couple of brown kids to represent them. So they made us an offer. It was not a cash offer. It was I'm just going to get like real transparent about the structure of the deal.
137?
I'm sorry?
That was 137 with VaynerMedia, right?
Correct. Yes. So that was thanks for paying attention on that one. So that was a co-production deal where they said, hey, look, we're not going to pay you. We will produce the podcast for you and allocate our manpower to building the show out and producing the micro content and all this other stuff. And, you know, in exchange, you just kind of do it. You know, and they actually offered to pay me. Now, let me give you guys a real fucking boss move for the 54 of you guys watching. And later on, whoever's going to watch later or whoever's going to listen later. The boss move is refusing the fee. Here's what I mean. I knew that they weren't going to be able to pay me what I can normally command because it was a smaller outfit and stuff like that. So I bystepped the fee because I'm not looking to get, you know, whatever that they were looking to do. And when you bypass the fee, you retain leverage. Okay. The moment I knew that I said, all right, yeah, give me a fee. The moment that they were going to start paying me, right, a nominal fee, which I knew was not going to make a difference anyway for me, then the leverage is different. And they're establishing that they are funding the operation and that they own it. And I was very careful to say, hey, look, I don't need the fee, but, you know, this is my show. I'm executive producer here, and we're co-production partners. And then what I said was, what we'll do is we'll build the show to a point where we can sell it to a brand. And when we get sponsorship on the show, we will split the revenue.
Wow.
How's that for a nugget? Leverage. Super fascinating. We did it. We built the show. We didn't build it huge. Lot of variables. You know, in truth, like, you know, I learned that you need your co-production partner to be invested in promoting the show. Because I was just getting, you know, if I were just be honest, I was getting more views when I was hosting it on my YouTube because I had a bigger YouTube than 137, which is their small brand. Like I knew how to market to my audience better than they knew how to market to my audience, which is natural, makes sense. And so we didn't build it huge, but we got a little bit of something. And then through their sales team, they were able to reach out. And I think we sponsored a segment. The origins of the show is very long for me. And then we made it segmenty. Like this segment, we talk about money stuff. This section, we talk about news. We made it a 3-segment show, intro, outro. So intro, 3 segments, outro. And the whole idea was to compartmentalize the show and make it modular so that we could we can sponsor certain segments. Right. So we got into it to sponsor a segment of the show where we talked about financial tools. Wow. And Intuit came in and they paid, you know, whatever it was, 10, 20 grand to do it. The trick was, it got complicated because Intuit paid that money, but they also want the distribution across the entire VaynerMedia portfolio of assets. But the principle is sound. You can build the show with a co-production partner, retain control of the show so you own it, and do a revenue share on the income. And someone just asked, different segments get different sponsors, and the answer is, well, my friend, ding 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 ding, daily double. That's actually a negotiating tool that you have. You'll find some brands only engage with content if they are if they are the exclusive sponsor. And
Right.
you can say, since you have multiple segments that can be sponsored, you can tell them, hey, look, we normally, sell these spots at X price. Now,
Right.
if you want to sponsor the entire podcast, you can. We can do an exclusive arrangement with you. The only thing I would ask is that obviously, it's not going to be the same price as sponsoring one segment. We would, sell you the exclusive rights to be, sponsoring this show. And you'll need them to commit to a certain time period so that you have the comfort that you're not going to signal to the market that this is an exclusive podcast, and then 3 months later you don't have them anymore. You need to guard yourself from that, right? So you do an exclusivity, just make sure you charge more for it because it's worth more, and then you do a little bit of a longer time period, like 1 year, I think would be good. However, don't get to exclusivity before you've done some trial engagements. So there's that. And by the way, man, like this is shit that I know in my head that I've never had the chance to like vocalize the actual breakdown of a media deal, because this doesn't just apply to podcasts. This applies to any type of content syndication, like a deal that you're syndicating with multiple parties, and how do you retain IP and so forth. And I'm not even layering in that I have, an entertainment lawyer, specifically a lawyer that represents me on all my entertainment affairs. I also have, an agent that brings me stuff that, takes a percentage of my income, 20%. And I take is the wrong word, because they bring me so much value. And, it's gotten to the point where I make income I get deals from my own, where inbound, and I still kick it off to my agent, because my agent handles the booking, the logistics, the pricing. And it's really great to have an agent, because then you're not tainted as a bad guy when you negotiate. Because sometimes when you negotiate, look, I'm gonna keep it a buck. These brands like to get a lot for a little. Right. They like to get a lot for a little. Then they will, and by the way, they will get friendly with you, and then, hey, how you doing? And then, sneak in little asks and stuff like that. And so since you're a talent, you're going to be inclined to want to say yes, because you want to please and so forth. But then if you're not careful, you are, bringing down your price, not because you decrease the dollar amount, but because you increased so much that you're doing, which is fine sometimes if you're getting started. But an agent really helps represent you and does the dirty work for you and says like, nah, it's going to be 15 grand, 25 grand, and then they fight, and then they're like the fall guy, because then, the brand looks at them like the asshole. And then when you come around, they're like, oh, thank goodness you're here, and then you stay clean, so to speak, when you're negotiating.
Right. Another thing that I saw someone put here, they were talking about doing a podcast in Nigeria and doing something that's international and starting. What is your thoughts on doing something that's international from another country? They're just asking, what perspective?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Look, I don't know much about the international market in terms of like how it relates to podcasts, stuff like that. I will just say that, there are like the African, there are, the continent of Africa has, hey, I think, did you turn comments off? I think you did.
Oh yeah, I did. Real quick. Sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, because I wanted to see something I couldn't see. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, gotcha. The population of people on mobile devices in the continent of Africa is greater than, the entire population of the US.
Right.
And there's a lot of emerging economies where there's more people on mobile there than we have in the US, which to me, it's, just ripe for consuming content. Facebook is still really big international. I know it's not as hot now, but things trickle out to developing nations more slowly. So by the time you've grown out of something, it's probably when it's starting to catch on over there. So I think it's good, man. I think, you should just do it. But I don't know what else to say beyond that.
Yes, just start. And a lot of the things you share are amazing. I mean, even the breakdown of revenue, even what you stated about sponsorship, segmented people, I talk to the group all the time. Someone was asking about different types of sponsorship. There's so many ways that you can make some type of income or money from doing your podcast. It depends on your niche. Like you stated, depends on what you're honing in to. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, and also keep in mind what your purpose for doing this for. Sometimes you get lost in that.
Yeah, let me just chime in there because I think it's a good subject. You should not expect to make money from podcasts anywhere in the short term future, my friends. And here's why. Podcasting is, although it's growing and Joe Rogan and so forth is pushing the price up, it's still nascent, and especially it's in the hierarchy of the allocation of advertising spend. It's still pretty low on the totem pole. So the king is still TV, and general spots on TV, and then there's late night, and then all different spots on TV. But then after that, then you have digital, and the first destination in digital, the first sources or houses where that capital will go is YouTube pre-roll ads.
Right.
Corporates love YouTube pre-roll ads because they can guarantee you impressions, because you can't fucking skip them. They're annoying. You can't skip them, but corporates love them because they can guarantee impressions. Then from there, you have, Facebook ads as a natural home. And, so you have all those popular lists. And then after all that, then you have like influencers as a subdivision of digital. It's growing now, and people will usually incorporate a influencer strategy. And then somewhere in the depths of that shit, turn a Campbell is like podcast. It's look, I'm telling you, for as hot as it is to us, and we love it, blah blah blah.
Right.
It's still like something where if you bring it up in a corporate marketing meeting, they're just gonna be like, cool. I guess
it's not traditional. It's non-traditional still in that medium. You know what I mean?
Correct, and it won't be forever. But I'm just saying, look, still as a whole, you might think it's late. It's early, and as a result of it being early, the people making the money are going to be either A, well-established names, or B, people that learn to sell branded content to brands. So, just don't think about monetizing it. You can, look, there are these platforms where you can monetize your listens, and just like YouTube, like you can run ads before your videos, but you're not going to be generating the amount of sheer listens that it's really going to be necessary to make a meaningful amount of cash. You might make a few bucks, $17. So anyway, just don't use cash as the North Star to start.
Right.
Build the leverage, and don't annoy the small audience that you have with ads anyway. Just build the leverage, and then cash your chips in for wads of cash instead of going for the pocket when you just got pennies in there.
Yeah, I hear some people asking, like, what other sponsorship do I get other than Podcorn? Where do I go? I mean, like you said, it all depends on, where you're at with it. Joe Rogan did it for 11 years. That's a long time, and it's not, but it is when you look at the whole.
It's a long time.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's about consistency, it's about longevity, also building relationships. So I think that it's just an important aspect of what you say. It's still it's making noise, but it's a non-traditional marketing revenue for companies still, exactly. Even when you bring it up. So I appreciate this talk. I feel like this was amazing. You shared so much. You were so open,
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
For us, I'm definitely gonna, as soon as this is up, I'm gonna email you so you can send me that information. I really appreciate that template you want to share with the group. Someone has said, what's the temperature for sponsorship been like since COVID? That's
Kavon. That's a great question.
A great question.
I don't know. What I do know is that I'm still getting brand deals. The deals pivoted a little bit. Like there's just been this little low-hanging fruit influx of all these corporates are promoting their response to COVID. So yeah. That's the deals that I've seen most of. Like, hey, Intuit rolled out their response to COVID, and they, as part of their influencer strategy, they engaged this is the way it works. The brand the corporate brand engages a creative agency. That creative agency then outsources to a digital agency. They develop that they're going to have, you know, an influencer strategy as part of their digital spend. So that digital agency then contracts an influencer specific agency. So you can see the money's going through a lot of hands, by the way. By the time
Right,
it gets
right.
to the influencer specific agency, they, you know, bill themselves as the king of finding experts or influencers. They then reach out to me or my agent and say, hey, we want to include John in this, you know, campaign. We think he'd be great for it. Have him pitch, you know, like, what's his rate? And then my agent will say, you know, um, you know, $7,500, $10,000. That's where I'm at right now. And, you know, it's a take it or leave it. I really don't, you know, sometimes these brands ask for so many deliverables and they don't pay that much. And I would have done it and did do it when I was earlier in my career. You know, when I was earlier, I was doing $500, $1,000. Like, I just cared more about the reps. Now my time has just grown more valuable. So I'll only take it if they pay me what I am looking for and if the deliverables are not so intense. Um, and then I also negotiate for a good net payment schedule. So these brands love to have you jump through all these hoops and ringers, and then they pay you on a net 90, which means 90
Wow.
days after you
Yeah.
deliver the content. No, 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 no. Like, I'd rather take a little bit less cash and actually get no net. Like, you pay me up front is my
Yeah.
preference. And then if I can't get that, then I'll try and get a net 15. And if I can't get that, I'll get a net 30. Net 60 sucks, but a lot of brands unfortunately are pushing to net 60 right now because of COVID. They're kind of managing their cash flow. So I'm getting a lot of COVID response types of deals right now. And you know, that's where the market is right now. And
That's a
I
good
don't
question.
think influencer deals are going to go away. I don't think brand deals are going to go away. I do think that if you already have a brand, you're going to get a higher percentage of the deals that there are. So those of us who put the work in over the last, you know, half a decade or decade are
Right,
getting paid, you know, paid out. Like for Joe Rogan, he's making 100 million. You know,
right.
I make considerably less zeros in that on my brand deals, but I'm still getting in on the action because I put the work in before. So anyone listening now, if you lay the foundation now, you know, next time the budgets dry up whenever happens down the road, there's less budget available, but it's going to go to few participants, and they're usually going to be the well-established players, which could be you next time there's a market swing. Bam!
Boom. So make sure
Other,
you're being seen. You're that. Make sure that you use leverage to your advantage, and not always think of the fee up front. Think of the possibilities that you have to control your own content. Make sure you hone in on your own content. Content, as you stated, have a niche approach when you're pitching. Know exactly what you want to do and who you're honing in on. These are really good points that I think that everyone should adhere to. Even myself, I've learned so much with everything stated. I appreciate it.
oh,
I'm
thank you. I
also
loved it. I had a great
um,
time. Turn this into
also
content. So here's what I'm going to do for
okay.
the 72 people listening. I'm going to drop this entire conversation on JH Radio. And look, I know you guys like know I don't do a whole lot of editing. I'm just gonna take it as a string out, upload it, and it's available. So if any of this was useful to you or helpful, then you can catch it on there.
Absolutely. And you're going to be featured also on our Podcasters Unlimited monthly meetup that we actually record, and we'll tag you on it. I
Oh,
definitely
cool.
appreciate you. I didn't expect to be this long talking to you. I'm very excited. Also, I wanted to plug in your apparel equity.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
you tell
yeah.
people
Shout
about
out
that.
equity. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
got a
yeah.
sweatshirt. I got
Equity
mine.
apparel, baby. It's for people that trying to build equity in their life.
That's right.
Rock the power of ownership is the tagline. So go to Equity Apparel and cop some crews, cop some hats. It's not really a money making thing for me. It's not that lucrative of a business, but I wanted to have like a physical touch point where people can rock gear that they feel proud about. So go on and get you some. Thank you for mentioning that.
Definitely. I got mine. So me and Steve have ours. So